She stood in silence, still wearing her wedding gown. Her hands were shaking. Her lips were dry. Her heart beat loud in her ears. He had just locked the door behind him. Slowly, he turned and walked towards her. Miriam backed up until her spine touched the wall. But instead of touching her, instead of saying anything, he placed an envelope on the bed, whispered one sentence. Then he walked out. And when she opened it, what she found inside changed everything. This was no ordinary marriage. It was a deal with death. They said she was foolish. They said she had no shame. They said she sold herself for comfort. And maybe they were right. Because on a humid Saturday morning in Ikoyi, surrounded by chandeliers and champagne glasses, 19-year-old Miriam became the wife of Chief Damien Akwudili, a 54-year-old billionaire, a man old enough to be her father, maybe even older. The headlines didn't spare her. Fresh meat for old money? Is this love or logistics? 54-year-old mogul weds teenage bride in luxury ceremony. But what the media didn't know was this. Miriam wasn't marrying for herself. Her younger brother, Jidena, was dying. Congenital heart disease. His breathing got weaker every month. Doctors had given them a window, 3 months max, and the surgery he needed was only available in South Africa. 19 million naira. Miriam's mother had tried everything, borrowing, begging, even fasting and prayer. But nothing moved, until Chief Damien appeared. He wasn't just rich, he was terrifyingly rich. Old money, old Lagos, old school power. The kind of man you greeted with both hands and avoided eye contact with. Rumors followed him like perfume, lost lovers, land disputes, enemies that vanished. When Miriam met him in his glass office in Victoria Island, she couldn't speak. The marble floors, the gold-accented bookshelves, the quiet men in suits with no names. It was another world entirely. He looked at her once and said, "You'll do. I'll cover the boy's surgery. But you'll marry me immediately." No proposal, no romance, just a transaction. Her mother looked at her with tears in her eyes and whispered, "Please, do it for Jidena." And so, Miriam nodded. She signed the marriage contract like a prisoner signs a confession. The wedding was beautiful on the outside, but haunted on the inside. It took place at Chief Damien's private estate in Banana Island. Imported flowers, celebrities, politicians, guests who didn't look her in the eye, but looked long enough to judge. Miriam wore a white gown stitched in Italy, but she felt like a ghost walking her own funeral. She walked down the aisle with no father beside her, only the ghost of obligation, only the weight of what she was about to endure. When the priest said, "You may kiss the bride," Chief Damien just touched her cheek gently and walked away. The audience clapped, but it sounded like thunder, ominous, cold. The real horror started after midnight. The wedding reception had ended. Guests were gone. The house was quiet, and the bedroom was massive, too massive. The chandeliers above cast long, sharp shadows across the polished wooden floor. There was a velvet robe hanging on the back of a chair. A bottle of aged wine sat untouched on a tray. Miriam stepped inside like someone entering a lion's den. She had been dreading this moment all day. She sat at the edge of the bed, her body stiff, her face pale. Her veil had already been removed. Her lipstick smeared. Her palms were sweating, even in the cold. Then the door creaked. He entered, slowly. He didn't smile. And then he locked the door. Her heart nearly stopped. She didn't speak. She couldn't. Her throat felt like it had closed up. Chief Damien walked to the table, poured himself a glass of something dark, then turned to her and said nothing. The silence lasted forever. Finally, he walked toward her. She held her breath. But then, he stopped beside the bed and placed a thick brown envelope beside her. He looked her in the eye, just once, and said, "You'll never have to touch me. This isn't that kind of marriage." And with that, he walked out, leaving the door wide open. Miriam sat there, stunned, for minutes, hours. Time stopped. Her fingers trembled as she reached for the envelope. Inside was a signed will. Her name, everywhere. She was to inherit 45% of his estate. His staff had already been notified. His lawyers were copied in the documents. There was also a letter, handwritten. He had been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. Stage 4, less than 2 months left. And he didn't want to die alone. He didn't want to leave the world remembered only as a ruthless businessman. He wrote, "I've buried 3 children and 1 wife. I can't live through another goodbye. But I can at least leave knowing someone decent will carry my name. You reminded me of the daughter I never had. I don't want your body. I want your dignity. I want peace." Miriam dropped the letter and broke, not just into tears, but into pieces. She curled up in the center of the bed and sobbed until her lungs hurt. That night, she slept alone, in a room that smelled like money, pain, and something she couldn't name yet. Morning came slowly. The sun spilled through the tall windows of the estate like liquid gold, warming the ivory curtains and polished mahogany floor. But Miriam didn't move. She was still in her gown, still curled on top of the white silk bed sheets, eyes open, red, empty. No one knocked. No one disturbed her. They already knew. The new wife needed time. It was the maid who brought her tea, gently placed it on a tray beside the door, then vanished like a shadow. Miriam sat up slowly, her back aching. Her fingers still gripped the envelope like a shield. She hadn't slept, not really. She had just shut down. How do you process marrying a stranger who doesn't want your body, but wants your name? How do you react when the monster you feared turns out to be broken? The mansion was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that made you feel watched, even when no one was there. She walked barefoot down the hallway, past glass-framed art and ancestral oil paintings, until she reached the garden. And there he was, Chief Damien, sitting on a wrought iron chair under a canopy of jacaranda trees, sipping tea and feeding the koi fish. He looked up once, nodded, then returned to his silence. They didn't speak for the first 3 days. He never summoned her. She never dared approach him. They passed each other like shadows, quiet, respectful, distant. But every morning, she found a fresh envelope on the table. Letters, all written by hand, all gentle, soft, human. "I know I scare you, but I want you to feel safe. Take your time. I have nothing to take from you. If you want to leave, I will not stop you. But if you stay, I will teach you things you'll never learn in school." She didn't know when it happened. But by the 4th letter, she replied, just 3 words, "I'm still here." That same day, he invited her to walk with him in the garden. The sun was gentle. The air smelled of lavender and citrus. A quiet driver rolled him slowly in a custom motorized wheelchair, something she hadn't even realized he used. His gait had weakened. He pointed at a bonsai tree. "That one's from Japan. I bought it when I was still a boy, hungry for power. Funny thing is, it outlived everyone I bought it to impress." They walked in silence. Then he asked very softly, "Miriam, why did you say yes?" She didn't answer, not for a long time. But then she whispered, "My brother would have died if I said no." Chief Damien paused, looked at her, not with pity, but something deeper, like he understood. "Then maybe we're both just trying to save what's left of us." Days turned into weeks, and every day she learned something new: how to read profit statements, how to deal with greedy lawyers, how to spot manipulation in a boardroom. She sat in on his meetings. At first, the executives ignored her, dismissed her, until Chief Damien introduced her like this: "This is Mrs. Awkwardly. Anything you say to me, you say to her. Disrespect her, and you disrespect my legacy." Suddenly, she mattered. But it wasn't about the money. It was the way he looked at her now, not like a wife or possession, but a student, a successor. Still, something felt off. Every night, she heard sounds coming from the east wing, doors opening and closing, faint coughing, and once, crying. Staff avoided the topic. Even the maid changed the subject whenever Miriam asked. One night, she followed the sound barefoot down a candlelit hallway. She found a room, locked. When she touched the doorknob, a firm voice behind her said, "Not yet." It was Chief Damien. His eyes were soft, but final. "One day, when I'm gone, you'll understand everything inside that room, but not today." 2 weeks later, he collapsed in the garden, right after telling her a story about his first failed company, a story that made him laugh so hard he clutched his chest mid-sentence. He slid from his chair, hit the ground hard. Miriam screamed. The guards rushed in. The nurse was called. She held his hand in the ambulance, whispering, praying, begging, "Please, not like this. Please." At the hospital, monitors beeped. Nurses moved fast, but he just stared at her and smiled. "I told you I was dying. Don't cry now. It's not fair to your pretty face." She slapped his arm weakly, tears falling. "Stop joking. You're not dying. Not now." He chuckled softly. "If I must die, then I'm glad you're the last person I'll see." He made it through the night, but barely. They diagnosed an internal bleed. It was time. Doctors gave him 3 days, maybe 4. Back at the mansion, a lawyer was called in. He requested a private moment with Miriam in his study. He handed her a new envelope. This one was thinner. "Everything in that room I stopped you from entering. The key is inside here, but don't open it yet. Open it when I'm gone, not before." She stared at him, heart racing. "What's inside?" "The truth, and something you'll hate me for." That night, she didn't sleep. She watched him from the edge of the room, hooked to an IV, struggling to breathe. At 3:17 a.m., he whispered, "Miriam?" She rushed to his side. "Yes?" He stared at the ceiling. "Thank you for making me human again." And then, his eyes closed for the last time. The mansion felt heavier after the burial. The staff walked slower. The air felt colder, even though the sun still shone through the giant glass walls. Miriam wore black, but she felt gray. She stood at the back of the marble chapel inside the estate, staring at the closed casket. She hadn't cried in front of anyone, but when the last prayer was said and the guests began to leave, she bent slightly and whispered, "I married you out of fear, but I would have stayed out of love." She placed her white rose on the casket and walked away, heart splintered into quiet pieces. 3 days later, she opened the envelope, the one Chief Damien had given her with trembling hands before he died, the one that held the key to the locked room she had once tried to open. She stared at the brass key for a long time, then walked, alone, to the east wing. Every step echoed. The door creaked open. Inside was a forgotten world. Dust, frames, old photographs, papers, journals, and letters. Hundreds. But what stopped her, what froze her, was the photo on the wall. It was a girl, maybe 15 or 16, smiling, wearing a yellow school uniform. She looked exactly like Miriam. Same eyes, same nose, same smile, before life washed it away. Below the photo in shaky cursive, "To my daughter, Neoma, lost but never forgotten." Miriam staggered back. Her heart skipped. She grabbed one of the journals, opened the page. It read, "She would have been 19 this year, like Miriam. I see her in that girl's eyes, the same strength, the same quiet sadness. If I can't have my daughter, maybe I can leave the world knowing I helped someone who reminds me of her." Miriam fell to her knees. She wasn't just a stranger. She was a mirror of the daughter he lost, a daughter who died in a car accident 10 years ago, hit by a drunk driver while coming home from boarding school. Chief Damien had never recovered, never forgiven himself. He paid off the school, silenced the media, and shut that room forever. Until her. She clutched the journal to her chest, sobbing so hard she couldn't breathe. He hadn't just married her to give her comfort. He had married her to give himself closure, to pass his legacy, to the image of the one he couldn't save. But the story wasn't done. 1 week later, she got a call from Chief Damien's lawyer. He had just uncovered a second will, dated the night before he died. And this one left everything to her, 100%. The original 45%, canceled. Now the entire estate, the companies, the shares, the legacy was hers. The board tried to fight it. They said she was too young, too inexperienced. They wanted her out. But she walked into the boardroom in a black suit, calm and composed, held up the will, looked every man in the eye. "I didn't ask for this empire, but I'll carry it. Not for me, for the man who believed in me when no one else did." They stayed silent. And from that day on, she wasn't just a girl who married a billionaire. She was Mrs. Miriam Okwudili, CEO, heiress, widow, survivor. But no amount of wealth could erase the ache in her chest. She would walk the garden paths alone, sometimes stopping at the bonsai tree he had shown her, and whisper, "I wish you'd told me. I wish you had more time." Morals from the story. People are more than their money or mistakes. Sometimes the richest people carry the deepest wounds. Life doesn't always make sense when you're in it. Sometimes pain is the path to purpose. Never judge a person's choices until you've lived their story. What looks like gold digging may be life-saving. Kindness doesn't always come in the package you expect. Some blessings arrive wrapped in fear. If this story touched you, don't scroll past it like it never happened. Someone else needs to feel this too.